Hot Water History, episode 198, Thursday night, cold in Chicago. Richard, what's going on?
Well, it is the day after the a very important day in terms of I have a little story about the feast day of the saint, and that's Saint Agnes that I could tell. It also happens to be the anniversary of the death of Stonewall Jackson, with an amazing story that's recounted for us by the great Shelby Foote, Southern and Confederate historian, and well, just historian of the Civil War and American history, and we'll touch upon that in a moment. But can I tell you my story about what my recollections are of every day that St. Agnes's feast day comes about? Way back before Charlie was born, 1997, I was living in Rome as a college student, and I'd only been there for about, by that time, 10, 15 days, and the Feast of St. Agnes came up. So I had the opportunity to go to the church Santa Ignace in Rome, and they had a cardinal presiding for Mass. And on the feast day of St. Agnes in that church, an rather ancient church, the lambs that are raised in Trastevere by nuns in Trastevere are blessed on that day. Agnes or Agnese meaning lamb. And so it's on her feast day that the lambs are blessed. Now, these lambs carry special significance and is part of the Mass. These lambs, once they're raised, and by the way, it's kind of cool. They're so little, the lambs, that they fit in baskets, like these little baskets, and they're carried up. And the lambs are kind of calm and pacified, and they're a bit tied down by ribbons. So they stay still, relatively still, and they get blessed, and then they are taken back to Trastevere to be raised and cared for by the nuns. And it's those sheep, when they're shorn later in that year, that is used to make the pallium, or the garment that's given to the newly ordained archbishops of that year. Now, it just so happens, therefore, and I got a picture with the lambs. So I had a picture with the lambs when they grew into sheep. Their lamb's wool was used to make the pallium of none other than the then newly elevated Archbishop of Chicago, and that was Cardinal Francis George. So
That's
I told him that story, and when I met him, and he got a kick out of that.
that's cool.
Yeah. So he was a saintly man, even though he made some errors and mistakes, and he wasn't as traditional as we might like, but he was a good man, I think. That was my impression of Cardinal George. Very holy, uh, and reflective and contemplative.
Nice. What year did he die?
Let me think. How long have we been punished and reprimanded by the mere presence of Cardinal Thupich? Um, hmm, maybe 20, was it before? What? Oh yeah, it must have been, well, I don't know. I think 2014, 2015.
Really?
We're talking
That
10 years now with Thupich, Blase.
blase.
Yeah.
Do you want to play the Stonewall Jackson clip?
Mm. Yeah, so Stonewall Jackson recounted for us at least his death by the great historian Shelby Foote. Here we go.
I'm also back up a little bit and remind me about A.P. Hill, too. When Jackson lay dying, what's the scene?
The scene is in a bedroom in which he's coming in and out of consciousness. Pneumonia is what he died of, not the loss of his arm. And his wife got there to be with him. And the surgeon, Dr. McGuire, told Miss Jackson that her husband would die that day. And she told him, said, the doctor says that you won't last the day out. And he said, oh no, my child, it's not that serious. And he went off into some sort of sleepy delirium. Pneumonia affects people in strange ways. And then finally she said, you will be with the Lord this day. And he called the doctor and says, Dr. McGuire, my wife tells me I'm going to die today. Is that true? And the doctor said, yes, it is. He said, good, very good. I always wanted to die on a Sunday. And when they offered him brandy or morphine, he said, no, I want to keep my mind clear. And the last thing he said is sort of, he wandered in his mind. He was calling on A.P. Hill, prepare for action. And then all of a sudden he was quiet, and very quiet for a spell. And he said in a clear, distinct voice, "Let us cross over the river and rest under the shade of the trees," and then died.
Beautiful phrase and confidence in and total abandonment to our Lord, right? May his will be done. It's just classic and fitting. If you've ever have you ever read a biography of Jackson? I would recommend a few or several of them that I have a list of them. It's not off the top of my head that I can name them, but there are really some great ones. And people forget how versed he was and tr a true scholar and gentleman in the greatest, maybe aside from Lee, Calhoun, there are so many. St. George Tucker, John Randolph, Madison Jefferson, um, maybe the greatest son of the South, Stonewall, Thomas J. Jackson. Just what a true gentleman. And he was kind of a knight of the old order who lived in a century that maybe didn't deserve him.
You told that story, I think, on the pod, but you told me that story the first time for the first time, and
About his last words, yes. Let us cross to the other side of the river.
it sounds better in the authentic Southern accent.
I did my best.
Yeah. Yeah. But we got a bunch of topics. We're gonna be talking a lot about, it's a big surprise here, Israel.
Can
And
we pause for a moment just try to tie in? Think about I had this thought the other day. Let me bounce it off you, and I want to get your reaction from it. What would Thomas Jackson or Albert Johnston or Pierre Gustave Touton Beauregard or Robert E. Lee, what would they say about having fought a war for, in their mind, the preservation of the ideals of the American Revolution and for representative government and self sovereignty against a union that was, and Northern powers, both politician and soldier, as well as political entrepreneurs, who were hell bent on maintaining the Union so much so that they, without any pause or reflection, invoke sacred scripture to describe it, right? A house divided against itself cannot stand. And Julia Ward Howe, mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord, as she's looking at the Union Army as if they're all angels. We know that the Union Army conducted itself in anything but angelic ways, demonic angelic in many cases. So even after the conflagration of the Civil War and the destruction that it wrought, in many ways, it was the mortal wound to the Union, even though it persisted on in a mutated way. That having had all that sacrifice, what would Thomas J. Jackson say to the fact that Israel now owns that union? That this small Jewish, Zionistic, mostly atheistic, artificial apartheid state, ethno state, dictates domestic and foreign policy to that same supposedly sacred political organization and institution for which hundreds of thousands of men perished. I could only imagine the shock only to be matched by the disgust.
right.
What was that? I could just see Jackson saying, well, what the hell was that all for? Right?
Yeah.
In other words, if what are we talking about? 160 years later, 161 years later, that the same structure and system thought to be so sacred by Lincoln, Joseph Story, Alexander Hamilton before him, and every subsequent nationalist, all the way down to, I, well, just compare the stately nature and gentlemanliness of a Lee or a or Jackson to Donald J. Trump, who features none of that in his person or leadership or intellect. And then all of the, yeah, I mean, in a way, Southerners might say, well, this was inevitable. If you're going to, you're casting into the river the whole idea of the republic, right? And a restrained Republican government at that in favor of sectionalism. And since then, of course, the inevitable has happened where you had the at times rapid and then other times restrained de-evolution toward empire. I mean, it's so altogether clear now that the supposedly vaunted and hallowed institutions that were created at the Constitutional Convention and put into practice subsequent or thereof have utterly failed. It reminds me of that quote from, I forget who was at the time. It wasn't John Hanson, it was a subsequent man who was the de facto president of the Congress under the Articles of Confederation during Shays' Rebellion. And he wrote a letter to Prussian King Henry. And he said, as a result of these Shays and debtors' rebellions that had sprung up in the uh, intermittent period between the revolution and the end of the Revolutionary War and then adoption of the Constitution. So we're talking 1786 and 1787. And he begs Prince Henry, he says in the letter, would you come and rule us as king? Our institutions of representative government have clearly failed. So it unfortunately there's no one to appeal anymore, right? And the government is so riddled with pedophiles and corrupt ignoramuses and apparatchiks and Marxists that there's not even a notion of appealing to God with any sincerity anymore. And to have that cabal all honeypotted and then whether they're in the White House or they're on Capitol Hill or they're in the halls of the Supreme Court or the courts of the various benches or the bench of the Supreme Court. I mean, can anyone with any real sincerity see that not that any of them, aside from maybe Thomas Massie and Rand Paul, aren't utterly compromised? And then therefore there's no real genuine and authentic appeal to the only person who could possibly redeem it all. And it's the same person to whom Stonewall Jackson appealed in his final minutes and hours.
That was it's funny because Stonewall Jackson, I don't think, well, Israel wasn't around back then, so you can't, but if you just dropped him into that with the, what did you say?
Well, Zionism was around. It just hadn't reached its fulfillment, right? It hadn't reached its end goal, nefarious as it is.
What was it like back then compared to now?
What do you mean, Zionism?
Was a way smaller scale.
Well, sure. Yeah, yeah. You had writers in the 19th century, especially after the revolutions in 1830 and 1848, many of which were motivated and inspired by nationalistic tendencies among various ethnic groups in multinational empires, whether they be in Russia, Austria-Hungary, you name it. And as a result, there was this fervor, especially in 1830. Greece is established out of the old Ottoman province. The Ottomans contained or had controlled Greece for uh, more than a century by that time. And so there's this, yeah, nationalistic fervor. Of course, the desire, it was always, I think one of the most demonic aspects of 19th century nationalism is not so much that people understanding themselves to be a nation, whether they be Serbian or Croat or Bosnian or Livonian or Corsican, whatever they were, or Ukrainian for that matter, or any of the Baltic states' nationalities. Not that they wanting self-representation and sovereignty is not a bad thing, of course. Let there be 10,000 Liechtensteins a la Hans Hermann Hoppe. What was bad was, however, that, and it was the spirit of the age, it's in many ways what was the undergirding principle behind Lincolnian thought, namely that if you're to be a successful country, if you're going to be a truly, in a sense, redeemed country, you had to pair your nation with a state. You had to pair it with a modern state, a la the French Revolution, uh, and shroud its and disguise the operation of that state, which was growing ever more in modern state, which was from its beginning totalitarian, but was growing ever more so in the language of the universal rights of man and Rousseauian general will and all these real fabrications so as to delude the populace that along with sovereignty, they were getting representation, right? Along with the establishment of a nation state, the trade-off, of course, from going from paying taxes to Vienna to now paying taxes to eventually, after a while, Belgrade, if you're a Serbian or in that case. Yeah, now you're what a benefit. I don't have to pay taxes now or tribute to the Habsburgs in Vienna. Now I get to pay tribute and taxes to some Serbian king. I happen to be Serbian, I guess. It's a Herodian bargain, right? It's a Herodian bargain. Like, okay, well, it's not so painful to me that I can pay taxes to a Jew if I'm Jewish, right? So of course, the response to that coercive act was simply, well, now you get representation, Serbia for Serbians, and that was a major component that what led to 20th century conflicts of a global nature.
You sent me a couple of clips. One, I've never heard this story. Do you want to introduce the story, or do you just want to play the clip and react from that?
Sure. Well, the first one is we're taking a look at is just a little comedic but also historical example. Comedy is this great solve, if you will, of being able to look back at a thing that's horrifying and yet understand that we can learn from it, and the story will certainly stick with us if it's put in a comedic or humorous framework. So let's take a look at Ari Mati's take on what has been historical heinous crimes perpetuated by the state of Israel, the modern state of Israel. Let's take a look.
They tried to nail which floor it was on. They're like, the whole building goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't give a fuck. The Mossad is crazy, Joe. Don't upset the Jews.
Where's that yarmulke?
Huh?
Put it on.
What's that?
Put on the yarmulke.
I love the Mossad.
Wow.
Israeli Secret Service.
Tell us.
See, okay.
Tell us more.
I will. See, like usual Secret Service, CIA, MI6, they gather information and then they kill the guy. Like with cyanide, or they poison the soup. Nobody even knows what happened. Mossad gathers no information and they just blow up the whole building. Mossad always has civilian casualties. So they're after one of the leaders, okay? And they find him in Oslo, Norway, disguised as a pizza delivery guy. Great disguise for a terrorist. You have a bicycle, bring, bring. You got some pizza boxes filled with fucking C4, you know. You're meeting creepy guys in the alley. You're a fucking pizza guy. So the Mossad tracks this guy down. They pull up on him in a car in Parliament Square, downtown Oslo, blow his head off with a shotgun. Brains go flying into the guy's friends' hands. They collect the brains, you know. The Mossad disappears. Successful mission, you would think. 6 months later, they find out, wrong guy. Regular pizza guy.
So you said you hadn't heard that story before, huh?
No.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah. From my recollection, when was the Munich Olympics? Was that 70 or 72? So that was just after Munich, if I'm not mistaken. So that was the motivation. Gotta get all those terrible pizza delivery boys in, as you know, because Norway is so proximate to Tel Aviv. So you really got to go out and get them. And hey, if we shotgun to the head and blow the brains out of the wrong guy, well, I'm sorry. That's our prerogative. After all, the Holocaust, right? The Holocaust and the Shoah as the justification for all of the heinous acts that follow.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, it's called the Lillehammer incident or the Lillehammer affair. Lillehammer being a suburb of Oslo, from my recollection.
Yeah. Dark to joke about, but because
Yeah, but as I, Dave Smith reminds us, and comedians like Ari Mahdi, and I just saw Leonardo Joni last week. Um, they remind us when they do these historical kind of framed jokes, even when they're recounting or aspects of it recount terrible crimes perpetuated by people, or in this case, all people, tends to be all people all the time. Um, well, it does, it has this, I think, warranted catharsis for us. What I mean by that is like, oh, if we're able to at least not so much chuckle at the expense of the victim, because I don't think that Ari Mati or anyone else in the audience, when they're laughing about this,
yeah,
is unsympathetic to the victim.
it's the irony of it all.
It's the irony of it all, and then the recognition. A case. Let me give you an example of what I'm trying to get at, or an analogous kind of historical liaison. You know, whenever in the Soviet Union, Stalin appeared in public, one of the things that Michael Malice and others, including Sean McMeekin and Yuri Sleskin, who's a great Russian historian too, whose book House of Government I read, which is fantastic. It's really, really detailed and very long. But the thing that you couldn't, you most feared doing wasn't scowling, it wasn't looking stern, or even maybe even shaking your head at something Stalin said or did in public. The thing that would bring about the greatest punishment is if you laughed, because laughter showed disrespect. Laughter showed that there was levity, or that you might be concocting something in your mind, or an insult to Stalin that you wouldn't dare utter, but you kept under your breath or silent. And if you laughed, well, that was, off to Siberia with you. And I think that's instructive here, because if we can laugh at the absurdity, it's not as though we laugh at the absurdity of that story and then we don't leave with we're not left with the lasting impression that some great heinous incongruity and inordinate situation has persisted. Yeah, I mean, it's very much like, remember that British comedian that we featured a clip of, I forget his name. He's a young guy, and he asked someone in the crowd, like, "What do you do for a living?" The guy says, I'm a war crimes investigator."
Yes.
Right? He goes, "Whoa!" Things got stepped up, and then he says, "Well, what area are you working on?" He goes, "Ukraine." And then he says, "Well, where are you from?" He goes, "Israel." And he goes, "The call might be coming from inside the house. What are you doing here?" So I think just level-headed, informed, good people of goodwill who have a shred of humanitarianism, authentic humanitarianism, and a concern out of fraternal love for the downtrodden and the disadvantaged, the dispossessed. We need a reminder, and that I guess we don't need the reminder, but it's good to be reminded of how the situation is such that the world's not our home. And I guess there is a tinge in me when maybe it's just because we're believers. I don't know if you have this experience too. Is like, well, God's justification, God's justice is coming here. And imagine how, when say C.S. Lewis and others write about the saints in heaven, or Dante writes about the saints in heaven, the the most meek and humble are the greatest and have the most grandiose appearances in heaven. So Saint Lucy is gigantic in heaven, and she gets wheeled in on a throne, pushed by angels, according to Dante. Pretty cool, huh? Uh, and her and light just pours out of her, heavenly light, like pours. She's effervescent. And the angels like party around her. They're like, oh yeah, Lucy, like that. So, I think that's a fantastic. So, for the people who have been victimized by the synagogue of Satan, the Jews who are identified in the Gospels as being those who are truly guilty of the deicide, have rejected God incarnate, and then their temple or their place of worship is destroyed in 70 by emissaries of the Roman Empire. Well, yeah, comeuppance is coming.
Right. I do feel that what you were alluding to all the time about the
Yeah.
last laugh. The last
Yes. Yeah.
laugh.
Right. Right. Right.
It's going to be a loud one.
Oh, right. And coming out of the Christmas season, right? The contrast of he in his first coming, it's done in utter meekness and humility and subjection, self-subjection to the Father's will. And the second coming is going to be the opposite. He comes in glory as Apocalypse, as the book of Revelation reveals to us, shows us. No one's going to be wondering, oh, is this the king? He's not going to come in the form of just a meek and vulnerable babe.
No.
No.
Same subject in
Yeah.
a way for the second video.
Uh-huh. You want to take a look at that? Intrepid YouTuber slash person on TikTok slash X, all the social media networks, had this insight about Steve Witkoff in the recent interview with Leslie Stahl of Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, both of both clearly of the synagogue of Satan. So we can go ahead and play that, what the impressions were there.
You see. Okay. Now, this is Jared Kushner being interviewed on 60 Minutes alongside Steve Witkoff, Trump's Middle East envoy and longtime friend of Netanyahu.
Well, part of the plan is the reconstruction, the building, rebuilding of Gaza. And your builders, tell us more about the plan and how much it's going to cost, where's the money going to come from, and who's going to award the contracts.
And Kushner lets Witkoff answer.
I think it's going to cost a lot of money.
What's a lot of money?
The estimates are in the $50 billion range. It might be a little bit less. It might be a little bit more. Money raising, we think, is the easy part. We think that happens relatively quickly. But it's the master plan, and we're working with a group of people who have been working on master plans for the last 2 years.
So there are plans already.
Witkoff says there's been a plan in place for 2 years. Watch Kushner's face.
We have plans already. We have a master plan already. And by the way, and Jared's been pushing this, and we're working together on it. And I think if the world saw the progress so far, they'd be pretty impressed.
The second Witkoff says there's been a plan in place for 2 years, you can see Kushner's expression change.
We have plans already. We have a master plan already. And
he immediately looks uncomfortable, like Witkoff just said something he shouldn't have. So let that sink in. A plan in place for 2 years. Now, this interview happened in 2025, and 2 years before that would be 2023, before October 7th. Are they saying there was already a plan for what would happen in Gaza before the attack even occurred? Now, I'm not telling you what to think. I'm not. But I'm telling you to watch that clip for yourself and ask, what plan? And why did Kushner look like that? Because he looked scared. So you've got the...
Okay, you and I know October 7th false flag. Ole Demigard didn't need to tell us. That didn't add up. Hannibal directive. They're taken by surprise. even though they had been warned by Egyptian officials that something that was being planned by Hamas. Israel had, and Netanyahu had funded Hamas for years leading up to that point. I mean, it's just we know all the now historical evidence that is like this resounding gong and flashing light pointing us to false flag. So that's not the surprise. What is the surprise there? And it's illustrated by Kushner's reaction to Witkoff's oopsie reveal was that going back to April, so we're talking about the spring of 2023, they already had plans in the State Department / deep state, whatever different odious levels of government Witkoff was involved with. Also, the deep state connected to the Halliburtons, the infrastructure big corporations and financiers who are going to eventually rebuild Gaza. That they had plans to do this to Gaza before October 7th. That's the big reveal. I mean, I don't know why. Of course, well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I don't want to feign ignorance here, but we do know why. No one's picking up on that. If Tucker Carlson was here, well, that should be all over the news. That's a big one. That's a big one. Something along those lines, he would say. But no one's reporting on it except these intrepid YouTube / X video posters.
A part that stuck out to me is when Witkoff asked, "How are you going to raise the money?" And he's so dismissive. He's just saying, "Oh, we don't think the
money's not the problem."
Yeah, we don't think raising the money is going to be very difficult.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
why not? It's a lot of money. Why is it not difficult?
Well, when you could just conjure up money through your central bank printing press and treasury that acts more like a promiscuous Paris boulevardier, just getting trampled upon, or at least the value of U.S. treasuries going down as the interest rates keep piling up. No matter what they try to do, even though the whole goal of the Fed supposedly is to maintain monetary policy and keep inflation low and unemployment low or whatever. So or moderate. So yeah, all those it really strikes you as that the house of cards is crumbling down there, and this administration for now the second time is completely. I mean, the messaging is as incoherent as their kind of programs or initiatives.
Yeah.
Plus, that Jared Kushner made beautiful Ivanka Trump an apostate. So, damn him.
Yeah. That's the biggest crime.
It is.
Do we have another one?
What about the charity? The charity story. Okay, so yeah.
We gotta talk about the charity.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, from the United Way to all these other charities, whether we're talking about Lila Rose raising for pro-life funds but paying herself $500,000 in salary, you're right to at this point be skeptical of where your charitable donations actually go to. Even Michael Hickburn has done great work at the Lepanto Institute, chronicling even St. Jude is a charity that you should be leery of giving to. So yeah, it's always more than appropriate. It's I would say required now. It's incumbent upon anyone who's doing charitable giving to check out what percentage of the funds are going to the cause to which you're supposedly giving. And here we go. How about a charitable fund that's organized by, you guessed it, the Amish? Nope, it's not the Amish. But people who go around the world and further victimize victims of cancer, pediatric victims of cancer. So let's watch this.
My name is Khalil. I am 7 years old and I have cancer.
In 2022, 7-year-old Khalil from the Philippines was diagnosed with leukemia. His mother was desperate to raise money for his treatment.
A huge amount of money was really needed for Khalil's medication because the hospital didn't have a stock of medicines.
A local scout approached the family offering help on behalf of an organization the BBC has identified as Chance Latikva. It's registered in Israel and the US.
Next week, please be very available. If Khalil's hair grows back, you'll need to shave it again.
Don't want to die.
Khalil was made to practice a script that made him plead for his life.
Please help me.
Then they filmed a video for an online fundraising campaign.
Help me.
It raised more than $27,000. But the family only received $700 on the day of filming. It was given to them in cash by another man linked to Chance Latikva.
I was really disappointed because the foreigner made lots of promises, but none of it came true.
BBC Eye Investigations has identified this man as Erez Hadari, an Israeli man living in Canada, a key player behind several scam fundraising campaigns. We've spoken to 9 families across 5 continents that were also targeted. They have never received any of the $4 million that appear to have been raised in their children's names.
Because a little bit of light pushes a lot of darkness away.
Erez Hadari and Chance Latikva did not respond to the allegations.
It happened suddenly. It felt like my whole world shattered.
Khalil died at the age of 8. His family unable to afford potentially life-saving care.
If I had known the amount of money we had raised, I can't help but think that maybe Khalil would still be here.
Simi Jola Osho, BBC News.
This is tragic.
Yes, it's hard to make a joke about this one.
Right. What slime?
Can you think of something more, a crime that is so inherently related to avarice? I agreed. That is worse than that.
The feeling that you brought up earlier about the last laugh is coming. I felt that the most watching this video.
Right.
That judgment's on the way.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I recall that from my recollection, I reposted that and I said, let the fiery balls of sulfur come, please, Lord. Just end it. I mean, at this point, wherever you have these Zionist operatives who are working in these ways, Sodom and Gomorrah might have had it easy compared to what's going to be wrought against against these people. And we know that from the fathers of the church, we know from Revelation itself that the Jews are converted at the end. Yeah. But boy, that doesn't mean individuals aren't going to be burning in eternal fire for the just Judas level betrayal and vice that they exhibit. And then the Talmudic excuse that, well, they're just goyim, so they're here for our pleasure. They're here at our service, beck and call. And if that means, yeah, I can take advantage of some Filipino kid who has cancer, raise money in his name, and then deliver $700 to his care, only to months later see him die while you abscond with all the funds. That's a that's a level of depravity. It's like when Father Ripperger talks about how when he's convened with or communicated with demons who have possessed people, and he talks about sodomy, and the demons are like, yeah, we're cool with, we like sodomy because it leads souls to hell, so we could torment them, but it's so disgusting we can't even look at it. So when you're engaged as a human in a practice that's so unnatural and so inordinate, or in this case, so full of avarice, greed, and hatred of your fellow man, or in a sense, indifference to the suffering of your fellow man, that they can't, I don't know if the demons could even look at that. Like, ooh, that's a little rough even for us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Effective but rough. I wonder too, another thing to in a theological sense to ponder is that remember, demons like subtlety. They like subtly pulling you to hell. They don't want some big grandiose, I shouldn't say like utterly depraved type of sin that's so utterly so completely disgusting that people are like, whoa, they convert. Thomas Aquinas talks about how that God allows us to be, or he'll pull grace away and thus lead us to become more vulnerable to sin so as to, in his divine plan for our lives, then supply us with grace and a recognition upon transgression, upon recognizing the depravity of our sin, that we repent very quickly. Gregory the Great has fantastic lines about this. The general prizes more highly the soldier who at one point deserts the other side, only to recognize the evil of his act and returns to fight ever more courageously.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yes, and Ignatius Loyola has this in the spiritual exercises. So that's a dynamic that's true. Um, yeah. So in a way, the the level of evil and the total lack of the good in those acts, right? The viciousness of those acts. I mean, think about how out of that suffering, those who are victimized by him have been made holy, right? And then those like uh the mother who is featured through her suffering, she might attain redemption and deeper faith. Yeah. So that's something to consider.
Do you want to talk about a town also dealing with similar issues?
Yeah, and they never seem to suffer for it though. They don't have that redemptive suffering.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Here it is.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
We should go to your gay suburb now.
People segment. Meanwhile, in Oak Park, brought to you by Trentine Brewing.
Sure is.
Get your beer. We got 3 stories today. Start with this. Revisiting Oak Park's ban on for sale signs. Local real estate professionals talk about the impact of the ban today. Worried about all the right things. In 2016, WBEZ's Curious City Project ran a segment about Oak Park's ban on real estate for sale signs. We ran the piece in its entirety to explain to newcomers why the real estate agents do not use for sale signs in the village.
Yeah, because the riffraff might come and actually inquire about coming into Oak Park. Got to keep it pure, right?
The ban began in the late 1960s in response to a real estate practice called blockbusting, in which real estate agents convinced white residents that black families were moving in, lowering property values. The agents then bought the properties of white families at low prices, sold them to black families at a profit, and rapidly changed the racial makeup of neighborhoods in the process.
Well, I'm confused though. Are they applauding the real estate agents? Other than, upcharging the black families? That's not good. But making it more racially diverse, shouldn't they be lauded?
That is interesting how they worded that.
Mm.
When this occurred in Chicago's Austin neighborhood, Oak Parkers like Roberta Raymond banded together and formed the Oak Park Regional Housing Center and created a fair housing strategy that would educate realtors and allow for better integration of the majority white suburb.
I'm suspicious of that.
In 1972, the village adopted a local ordinance banning for sale signs as part of these efforts.
Huh.
The thinking at the time was that a proliferation of signs on lawns would act as a scare tactic and convince neighbors that they needed to move out before their property values plummeted and the racial makeup of their neighborhood changed.
This is wild. It has so blame the sign and not the people for moving out, right? This is a fascinating piece because they don't want to blame the old Oak Parkers who are just as waspy as they were and are for moving out because of black integration into the neighborhood. So you got to blame the signs, blame the inanimate object. This is thoroughly progressive. Progressives love doing this.
A Supreme Court case in 1977 made the ban on for sale signs illegal, but Oak Park continued to retain the ban as part of its municipal code.
Just secede already.
The village did not enforce the ban, knowing it could not withstand a legal challenge, but local realtors kept up the practice. The ban, wait.
So the realtors kept doing it because the realtors knew that the village couldn't enforce the ban. You follow?
Why can't they enforce the ban?
Because it's against federal law. So for example, if they went to a realtor and
has that stopped them in the past?
No, but I think it would have made them pause back then because there was more recognition of federal supremacy.
Got it. The ban is still the practice among real estate professionals in the village today. This fall, a non-local real estate agent placed a for sale sign in front of an Oak Park home, and social media groups lit up with comments, both supporting the ban and stating that the ban had no place in a world in which discrimination in housing is so clearly outlawed.
Yeah. So in a way, it's thou doth protest too much, that dynamic, because wait, if the discriminatory laws are effective and the red lighting or lining laws are numerous and often enforced already, why continue the ban on the signs? Because I think there's an element here too. Why continue the bans on the signs is because this is a kind of meandering type of logic going on here, because what if people saw the signs and then the dynamic they thought happened in the 70s actually starts occurring? We're like, uh-oh, now more black people are moving in. They don't want white flight. You see? Sorry, go ahead.
We spoke to 3 local real estate professionals about their thoughts on the ban and whether or not it is still relevant today. Each emphasized that their views were their personal opinions.
Whose else would they be?
Molly Surowitz, vice president and broker of the local Baird and Warner office, recalls the sign kerfuffle from this fall kerfuffle. She received a text from a realtor in her office with a photo of a Baird and Warner for sale sign in front of a 2-flat for sale in Oak Park. Surowitz noted that the sign was not from an Oak Park agent. She reached out to the agent to explain the Oak Park rules. Quote, this agent was from Arlington Heights and had just ordered signs, and the sign company didn't know about the Oak Park ordinance, said Surowitz. How is that the signs?
How is that the real estate
sign company? No, how is that the sign company's deal?
Well, the sign company just prints what they say.
Right.
So it's the Arlington Heights realtor that ought to have known.
Yes. But they're saying, and the sign company didn't know about the Oak Park ordinance.
Oh, I get you. Well, yeah, why would the sign company care?
What?
Yeah.
When Surowitz explained Oak Park's sign ban to the agent removed the sign. Acknowledging that emotions can run high on this issue, Surowitz says that's
emotions run high on every issue in Oak Park.
Says that's due to the history behind the ban. Quote, we take it seriously because we're told about its importance in the history of fair housing.
Okay, so here's another thing that's so endemic to Oak Park and thoroughly progressive communities. And that is because everything is political, everything has to have this, even the most otherwise innocuous actions, thought to be innocuous actions, because everything's so politicized, it has to have this connection to some great historical movement in a Hegelian sense. Yeah. So something, it's always these binaries too. If the historical progress is linear, says the progressive, and we're moving to some great utopic, we have this utopic, what Hegel called zeitgeist, right? Moving toward the spirit. Well, then as a result, the actions can be deemed either as progressive or retrograde and anachronistic. So there's no in between. It always falls on one side of the scale.
Right.
Go ahead.
Some of the social media comments about the sign ban posited that local agents enjoy the sign ban because it lets them control the market. But Surowitz says that couldn't be further from the truth. Quote, signs help realtors get leads. We're not doing it to withhold information. We're doing it out of respect. Realtor Pat McGowan of Baird and Warner has been practicing real estate locally and has seen an evolution in the housing market. She says that even with the sign ban, the early days of her career were quite different. Quote, in the 1980s and early 1990s, there were what we called counseling blocks. Real estate brokers were required to have buyers counseled if they were purchasing on a block that was 50% or more minority.
Wow.
We were given maps. It was almost like redlining, she says, noting that the process was like a reverse of blockbusting.
Wild. Well, it'll,
This
but,
is a
but
huge part of Oak Park's history. This is a sneaky,
yes,
enormous part of how Oak Park is right now.
right, right. This might be the most fascinating,
Yes,
multi-layered piece ever in
there
the
could be a
Wednesday Journal.
documentary about this article.
Oh, for sure.
Calling counseling blocks more of a practice than an actual ordinance like the sign ban, McGowan says the industry was hyper local at that time.
Well, but as it being hyper local, it was just probably responding to the demands of clients, people who were in the market for a house, right?
Right.
So again, it's not as though the realtors are doing anything that isn't a reflection of market demand created by the consumer.
Quote, there were really only 3 to 5 big real estate offices in Oak Park. Once you got the majority on board, everyone just went along. There was no MLS, no for sale signs, and no computers. All we relied on was the Wednesday Journal and the Oak Leaves. We picked our office based on the exposure they had in the paper.
Huh.
McGowan says that local brokers have long known that they don't need for sale signs to sell houses, stating, quote, it never impeded us from doing business. We've weathered some really bad storms with no signs, interest rates at 15 to 16%, the market crash, COVID. Today, things have changed, McGowan says. An effective marketing strategy is always going to come home from the internet.
That's well said.
Cynthia Ho Gajewski, a realtor at Beyond Properties,
Cynthia
recalls.
Ho? How?
Oh, did I say how? How Guy? I was worried about Gajewski. Cynthia Ho Gajewski,
Charlie's insinuating Miss Cynthia's promiscuity.
A realtor at Beyond Properties, recalls driving around Oak Park in the 90s looking for a house to buy and thinking there wasn't a single home for sale.
Except in the black areas.
It wasn't until she connected with a local realtor that she learned about the history of the sign ban. Like McGowan, she says the real estate industry has evolved since then. Quote, we live in a different world now in terms of information. The ban is still a part of Oak Park's legacy, but I don't think signs sell houses. Everyone looks online.
What do
I
you
don't
think about
know.
that? I think a sign in front of the yard is just I mean it doesn't wherever I've lived in the city, in the suburbs, seeing it. By the way, the only thing that worries me about seeing a bunch of signs is not who's moving in, it's who's leaving and why.
Why are they moving
Or
out?
that property values are going to go down. Not because of the race of who's moving in, but just because there's greater supply. So that's got and I don't think what's the difference of it as if I saw a sign or a couple for sale signs on a block and I go on Zillow and I see, oh shit, look at all the houses that are for sale in my area. Right?
Right. Reflecting on her experience in the 1990s, she says, quote, we didn't have a cell phone in our pockets. We had to get a paper and call a real estate agent. Now you just get out your phone and check an app. For Gajewski, the positives of the internet can be helpful in the way that the sign ban was years ago. It keeps buyers focused on the characteristics of the house. Quote, when people are looking at a property online, they focus on the particular house. If COVID taught us anything, it's that people buy because of the listing photos and the floor plan.
Interesting.
Gajewski says that signs in front of houses do 2 things. They tell the neighbors that you're selling, and they provide advertising for the real estate brokerage.
Right. Yes.
Does Oak Park still need the ban? Everyone we interviewed emphasized the significance of the sign ban in Oak Park's fair housing history.
Huh.
I was
What's
just
significance?
laughing because it would be funny if they pulled somebody that was hardcore traditional. We need to keep the sign ban.
Yes.
There's somebody on the complete opposite that was saying we need this forever. Whether the sign ban official or not still matters is a different story. Surowitz says with the high desirability of housing in Oak Park, it might appear that the sign ban isn't necessary any longer, but she wonders what might happen if Oak Park wasn't the incredible community that it is. Would people want to sell all at the same time? For example, if you saw a condo building with 20 for sale signs, you would wonder what was wrong.
Well, yeah, but
That's different from
that's a that's a
the
good thing.
condo. Yeah. Quote, the ban has worked, so we keep doing it, says
But
Surowitz.
what has it worked to do other than indicate to people that there's a shortage of available housing, right?
Right.
Okay.
McGowan agrees. Quote, we do things that way because of the results. It works. She
But
notes
that's discouraging because that Pat McGowan was so insightful before. I mean, we just keep doing things because of the results. It works. Well, how do you know if you've never been involved in real estate where the signs were allowed? Right?
my guess is Oak Park is one of their better towns.
I would think so, but wouldn't it be enhanced because she already indicated that it provides its advertising showing the availability. In other words, okay, why would anyone not want to have a visual display that a product that you're selling is available?
Yeah, but because what if people are thinking the opposite, that subconsciously it's just a marketing thing where you drive through another town, there's a bunch of for sale signs. It's like what you were saying, why are
I
people
get
moving
that.
out?
I get that. So I suppose there's a level of discretion, or there's a kind of law of what's the economic law um where you don't get a return the way you want. Oh God, why? Um, anyway, why is it diminishing return, right? So if you deploy too many signs,
Exactly.
it's detrimental.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that the opposite is true, right? So in the case of, like, for example, you're a cook. This is the example I think Bob Murphy uses for diminishing return. Say you run a restaurant and you're anticipating so many customers to come into the restaurant that night. Well, it makes sense, therefore, that you determine how many chefs you need in the kitchen or how many runners and the like. If you have too little, that's bad because the orders are going to pile up and you're not going to be able to get them out. But if you have too many chefs, they're going to get in each other's way and the cooking actually slows down, even though you have more workers and labor involved. Yeah. So the point being is, let's say too many signs would be like too many chefs in the kitchen,
Right.
would indicate that there's too much availability, right? But no signs would indicate that there's no availability.
But that might be good.
But why would that be good on any scale?
Because
In any, so for example, if I said there's
they're
no
saying that people are looking online anyways. People know that just because there's no yard sign doesn't mean that the home might not be available.
Correct. Okay, but have you never had the experience of when you go through a neighborhood and you're like, I kind of like this neighborhood. I would live here. And you're driving through and you're like, man, there's nothing for sale here.
I think way more people feel the opposite.
Okay. Well, okay, but I
adds
just had a recent
level of exclusivity.
Oh, right. But I mean, again, if you're driving through a nice neighborhood and there's two signs over 8 blocks, and it just happened, or you're familiar with the neighborhood and you like to move into and you drive through often, and then finally your kind of dream house, you go past your dream house and it has a sign in front. You're like, oh shit, that's the house I want. In other words, you wouldn't be prompted if there are no signs around, other than the utterly curious to be like, well, maybe they have a law because this is Goofy Oak Park. Maybe they have a law that doesn't allow for or permit yard signs, so I have to go online to figure it out.
This last sentence is kind of where my argument is
Okay.
This is a total exaggeration. So she's saying I don't think Surowitz actually means, for example, if you saw a condo building with 20 for sale signs, you'd wonder what was wrong. So my guess is in these other towns, they're getting questions about, hey, why are there so many for sale signs? But in Oak Park, they don't get those questions.
Okay, but that is a surreality or irreality that, in other words, in her example, which is kind of a straw man example, when have you driven past a condo, a large building, it has 20 for sale signs in it?
No, I
Never.
know. It's an exaggeration to say in these other
Yeah,
towns
but
that we serve.
you can't make a rule based on the extremes, right? So, especially such an extreme that never occurs. My point being here is that, again, going to law of diminishing return, if you have no visuals, it would be like, for example, if everything's online, why does Andy's Frozen Custard have a sign out in front of their building? Why can't they just have it just be a nondescript building?
No, I totally disagree on this. I totally disagree on this.
Okay, why?
Because what all of these real estate agents are basically, I think what they're basically trying to get at, and that's why they mentioned online, is because the cost of somebody seeing too many yard signs is way greater than it's way greater than the return of, the once in a while hit that they get from the hey, I saw your
Okay, I see your
sign.
point. Sure, okay,
I saw your
sure.
sign, so I want to call you up. Especially if it's a house, this is just a random house. You're not going to hit up an agent that you don't know. People are going to do their research anyways. You're not going to
Sure.
call up a real estate
Okay,
agent because you saw one sign
okay,
without
but that
looking at
one,
anyone else.
I get your point, and I'll concede that that's a well argued point in the here and now because of the availability and the ubiquitous dependence that we have on the internet. Okay. But going back to when that one woman says in the 90s, no one had the internet and they still had this stupid law and ban. So they had to go to the newspapers, right? To find what houses were available. What, and that one, who was the one woman, the one you said that was promiscuous? The hoe?
Gajewski.
Yeah, Gajewski. She said the other thing our realtors would both then and now, meaning decades ago and now, lose out on is that they don't get the advertising. Because she said there are two components to the sign. They indicate the availability of the house, correct? And then they're advertising for the realtor.
Right, but she's saying that those aren't as great as they used to be. Back then, that used to be big. It was different before Zillow or Google. When you would search up real estate, back then that type of stuff mattered way more because there was no other option.
Again, so don't have a sign in front of your business.
No, you're still thinking about it like a business. We're talking about homes. That's different
But
from Andy's.
the home is the product. The home is the good, right? The realtor is providing a service vis-a-vis the product. Why would they want to be prohibited from advertising and visualizing that for
Because
prospective
all of
clients?
it's going online.
It's not,
They're all advertising online. It's just Google SEO. That's way more.
First of all, you're saying all of it. Are you saying that, well, if
I
that's the
shouldn't say
case,
I
if
shouldn't
that's
say
the
I
case,
shouldn't
why
say
don't they?
all of it, but I should say the
But
majority of people are going to do their research online when choosing a real estate agent.
but I'm going to prove you wrong now. If that was the case, if all of it,
No,
or
no,
let's
it's
just
not.
say,
Forget I said
all
yeah.
right, fine.
Forget I said all.
Let's say just the vast majority of it is done online, right? And everybody knows that you just seek out possible residences that are available or for sale online. Why do realtors put up signs in every other suburb when they're allowed to? They're obviously demonstrating their preference for using the sign. If they didn't, your argument would have greater merit if in River Forest or Berwyn or the city, no one used signs. But
No,
in every other place where the ban is, they do use signs.
right.
Where the ban isn't.
I think that the real estate agents like the sign ban.
I don't doubt that.
I think they're closet pro sign ban, but they
But they're
know
stupid. That's stupid.
why. Why is that stupid?
Because again, law of diminishing return. The total absence of signs means that they have a limited one advertising stream and two ability to make apparent or to physically show the availability of their product.
But
In
those
other words,
limits are so
the sign is
small.
an avenue. It's not that small. If it was that small, no one would use signs outside of Oak Park. And everybody uses signs outside of Oak Park. So My
Right,
point.
because of the political issue, because of the history that they went through here is my that's I think they're kind of dancing around the fact that, hey, we know this is a hot topic and we know that this has, racial undertones, but we do well in Oak Park. It's been great for us. The neighborhood's great. And I think they would prefer in the internet era, I think in the internet era, they would prefer no signs. Maybe they're right. It made sense to have the signs out because of what you're saying. That had a way bigger effect than it does. The effect now is very minimal because of Zillow and Google SEO. But right now, back then, there would be a special use to have a sign.
So only Oak Park has progressed to that point.
Well, Oak Park just didn't change it at all. Oak Park just didn't change it at all.
Right. Okay, then why didn't Cicero pick up the ban?
Because of the political,
ban is,
because it's political, because it's
but it's just as political in Cicero as it is in Oak Park.
It's just as political. Weren't they talking about this being a federal ban? This is just a federal ban that
No, the federal decision, the Supreme Court decision outlawed the ban.
but Oak Park continued to retain the ban as part of its municipal code.
Right. So
yeah.
the village didn't enforce it.
Yes.
So obviously, but that just strengthens my argument. The village didn't enforce the ban. So what did realtors do? It says the local realtors kept up the practice. Correct?
Because the realtors they enjoy that.
So they saw it as ideologically consistent and economically advantageous, the ban. Right? But they're wrong. I mean, in other words, they could demonstrate a preference, which is what they're doing. Okay. Yeah. But it doesn't make economic sense for them to do it.
But I think it does in 2025.
In Oak Park. Just, okay, limited to Oak Park. It makes sense. In 2025.
In 2025 Oak Park, I think no bans is a lot more powerful than if they let. And I think that's what they're trying to get at. I think the realtors are saying, hey, this is actually Oak Park. We don't really want to touch anything because Oak Park the homes sell like hotcakes here. And we don't want to mess with that. They sell way better than, all these other suburbs with signs.
Yes.
Let's not mess with this at all.
Okay, so yes. So let sleeping dogs lie.
No. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that they're trying to make the case because if they were, let's just say this, if they wanted signs, I think they would get signs.
But they're banned. The Arlington Heights person wanted a sign. They put the sign out in front.
I understand that, but I'm saying if the real estate companies really wanted it bad enough, I think that would get changed. Oak Park would have signs just like every other suburb.
Yeah, I'm not doubting that the realtors are being authentic by saying as the McGowan woman and then the Gajowski hoe that they like it. But they say, look at their language. The ban has worked, so we keep doing it. That's just status quo bias.
No, I don't think so. Because they can A/B test. They have other suburbs nearby.
You think they're that sophisticated that they're A/B testing?
No, you have 20 years of selling homes. You could say, okay, Oak Park does better than another town. It's not.
But multivariate analysis, Charlie. They couldn't possibly say Oak Park's doing better in terms of selling homes because mainly we don't have lawn signs.
Or
go to a comparable suburb. Let's say I would go so far as to say Evanston doesn't have this ban. I mean, and Evanston, everybody knows, we have already said, is the Oak Park of the North, right? So let's compare Evanston to Oak Park. Oh, Evanston allows for lawn signs, I would suspect. Okay. I would say the prevalence of and the appearance of lawn signs has done nothing to bring sales down in Evanston. It has nothing to do with whether the lawn signs are allowed or not, both back then and now. It's the attractiveness of living in the leafy green Hemingway, Frank Lloyd Wright, Oak Park. I mean, if you are in the market for a house from Oak Park and you're willing to pay disastrous property taxes in order to be part of that community, You're going to go there because of the value, not because there's a. I get the sense that, especially now, again, I will admit that you don't want as a realtor to be selling on a block where there are 3-yard signs and there are only 10 houses. Okay, that would be an indicator that there's something wrong with the neighborhood per the condo analogy, right? But one sign on the block is advantageous. It shows the availability of the house that, I mean, why would you want to keep that under the wraps? And then you're going to say it's just the internet now.
No. Let's go back to this paragraph. The ban began in the late 1960s in response to a real estate practice called blockbusting, in which real estate agents convinced white residents that black families were moving in, lowering property values.
Right. This was a necessary, essential ingredient to white flight. Yes.
The agents then bought the properties of white families at low prices, sold them to black families at a profit, and rapidly changed the racial makeup. The point is that the agents had way more control over some real estate agent in the 1960s made a killing just doing this.
But they only did it. This is the same thing as predatory pricing. This only can economically take place because in a way it's like a Ponzi scheme, okay? And predatory pricing, they're buying it up at a low, but the problem is once white flight got going, right? Then you have such an abundance of moving out that you could scoop it up. But are there enough black families who have the capital to move in and buy the homes? You see, you're creating such supply, but you don't have the requisite demand.
See, okay, I think this is BS, this part. Some of the social media comments about the sign ban posited that local agents enjoy the sign ban because it lets them control the market. But Surwitz said that couldn't be further from the truth. Signs help realtors get leads. We're not doing it to withhold information. We're doing it out of respect.
They're not doing it out of respect.
That's what I'm saying. I think everything he just said here, I think everything here is BS. I think they do enjoy the sign ban.
Because it lets them control the market?
Yes.
But how does it let them control the market?
Because like we're saying, a nearby suburb that's, you've got 8 for sale signs.
Okay.
You got 8 for sale signs. You're thinking, why are they all moving out? Why are people leaving this town? What's up with the schools here? But in Oak Park, they're not affected by Oak Park because of the sign ban. They're not really affected by the hard times where 8 people have a for sale sign out
I get that. You're right, but that would go to my suggestion of too many chefs in the kitchen. Yeah, you don't want 8 signs on the block, right? But is there an effective number of signs? I would argue there is, and it's greater than 0.
You don't control if it's a hard time or if the schools are doing bad. So there's 8 for sale signs now, and now everybody thinks that.
Why couldn't these realtors collude with one another? It's their mutual.
They're competing against each other.
No. It's to their mutual advantage. It's like franchises in Major League Baseball working together on rules. No, of course, it's their mutual advantage to say, look, we don't want a Century 21 sign here, followed by a Baird Warner sign, followed by a, Hasbro Properties or what Hasbara, I should say, properties, right? We don't want that, but could we make a rule that, like, okay, if my sign appears first, or my house goes up on the market,
that's way harder to coordinate than 0.
But the 0 is not effective, as effective as it could be, because and my point to prove my point is that they utilize signs in other suburbs. Every other locale where the ban doesn't exist, the realtors utilize signs. So in other words, the optimal marketing or the optimal business practice is obviously not 0 signs, right? We have to conclude that demonstrated preference. If it was optimal, if 0 signs, if the ban is the most advantageous thing for the realtors to do, outside of Oak Park, we'd see no signs. But it's not, because every other suburb that allows the signs, in other words, doesn't regulate them, there are signs.
No, because the village gets, as soon as the village, like, let's say River Forest says we're bringing back, so River Forest, they do allow signs. If they said signs are banned, River Forest is going to get killed for that.
Why?
Because of the people on social media. They're not going to get killed by the real estate agents. The ban had no place in a world in which discrimination in housing is so clearly outlawed.
I don't get your point here.
The point is that it creates too much of a political firestorm to have the no sign ban. This is probably the most traditional. Having no signs in Oak Park is probably the most traditional part of the town, is having no real estate signs, because they've kept that. They've kept that. I don't know if you'd call it ordinance, but like you said, every other place has signs except Oak Park.
Okay. My main argument is that by demonstrated preference, if it was so advantageous to the realtors and it was their preference that there be a ban, you see, then regardless of the politics involved, okay, they would do what's economically most advantageous to them. And so therefore, if the ban was so lucrative, and if the ban was such their own in accordance with their own volition, and the incentive structure is all lined up, you wouldn't see signs anywhere.
A Supreme Court case in 1977 made the ban on for sale signs illegal, but Oak Park continued to retain the ban as part of its municipal code. The village did not enforce the ban, knowing it could not withstand a legal challenge, but local realtors kept up the practice. The ban is still the practice among real estate professionals in the village today.
Okay, so notice they colluded together, right? They're working together. They're all keeping up the ban.
Right.
Right. And
because they like the ban.
They like the ban. Okay, so your point is just the politics is so overwhelming in Oak Park that they've determined that it's economically advantageous to not use any signs. Is that the crux of your argument?
No. The realtors like the ban.
Why?
Because it helps them control the market. It was different in the 70s now. It was better back then for more, I don't know if you'd call it nefarious reasons, than it is today. It just helps because the internet exists and having the sign, it doesn't really matter as much to have a sign. But back then, they got to have their little racket where they could, sell at lower prices and then sell it off at higher prices. And that was different back then than it is now. Today, it just doesn't really matter. Why would we ever get rid of the ban? It's not a lead magnet at all. Nobody's coming to us because nobody's calling us and saying, "Hey, I saw your sign outside of Oak Park Ave."
Okay. Let's move on.
We're not even done with the.
I know, this is gonna be like a 4-hour episode about yard signs.
Yeah, no, this will be the only Oak Park, because this one's way better, and I didn't think it was gonna get
the switch. Talk about being in the weeds, yard signs and all.
She notes that in 38 years, she's never missed not having a sign, but says that a sign ban might not have the same ramifications it did when the ordinance was enacted.
Okay.
She says Oak Park isn't always perfect, but I still feel like the value of the home
Understatements that lead to nothing.
Doesn't rely on who owns the home. We're very, very lucky in Oak Park. For Gajewski, the importance of signs is waning, even in neighboring suburbs like River Forest, where they are not banned.
All right, here we go.
She says that more and more clients want some form of privacy in the transaction, and that might take the form of not having a sign or listing their house on the private listing network. At the end of the day, she asks, quote, "How often have you knowingly sold a property to someone who saw the sign and closed on the property?" My answer to this would be never.
But then why does she do it in River Forest?
Because they have to.
No, they don't. No one's mandating them to do it in River Forest. It's not required that you put a sign up in River Forest.
Oh, you're saying why would the real estate company put a sign up?
Yeah, why? Well, the realtor is responsible for putting the sign up. Why put the sign up at all?
Because there's still there's still a difference between you're right. There still is a competitive advantage if all of the 8 signs in River Forest are Baird and Warner versus my point is, if you're going to open Pandora's box, yeah, you might as well get involved with the game. And you got Baird and Warner here, Rich Eyed Real Estate here. That part makes sense. You don't want all of the signs to say all the signs in the town to say this house got sold by Baird and Warner, because then you're going to think, oh, Baird and Warner. If you see it enough times, you're going to think they're the only real estate company in town.
Yeah, okay, fine. I wasn't thinking along those lines. My point was whether you have one home for sale in River Forest or you have 10 homes for sale as a realtor company. If I'm working for Berkshire Hathaway and I have one home and Baird and Warner has 8 homes, I still want my sign up in front of the house.
But that's different from zero. That's different from going from zero to however many is way different from 2 and 8. You're right. If your competitor has 8, you want to have those 2. But it's actually better for all of you just to have 0.
But if it's better for all of us, why do the signs appear at all?
Because of this.
Because there's a ban?
Yeah. This is or the village.
We're sticking it to the federal government.
No, the villages say we've progressed into the modern era where we think the practice of sign banning is racially motivated. The village doesn't want to deal with that.
Okay, so the village. So you're advocating for a government regulation rather than letting the free market operate, because the free market in this case would obviously operate to allow signs.
Right. I'm not arguing that a government should tell a local town that they should be able to ban signs. I'm saying the sign ban is actually helping the realtors, so they're cool with it. They actually enjoy. This is a
yes. Okay. I gotcha. So yes, they've appropriated this policy that started off as what they might have seen as kind of an inconvenience for doing, whether they were doing blockbusting or whatever, right? And encouraging white flight. Yeah, it was an encumbrance to them at first, but now they've taken it on and say, well, actually, in the way we've done it and the way we've kind of appropriated it is that it's advantageous to us because there's this feeling that nothing's for sale. So then we're able to control the marketplace by, in a sense, forcing people first to go to the newspapers and then ultimately to the internet to purchase the homes.
It's just a risk reward. The reward is that they control the market. The risk is that tough times, the economy goes bad, and you've got all these for sale signs, and now people think the whole town is kind of cooked. Or why are there so many signs? There's something going on with the schools. If O Pure F is doing really bad and people are moving out of Oak Park, and people drive down the street and they're saying, I'm seeing it. I don't know about you. I saw a ton of yard signs there.
I know I've conceded that point that law of diminishing return, too many signs is disadvantageous. But no signs is also economically disadvantageous. And I can rest my entire argument on the proof that remember, there's one person in this story. Actually, there were 2, but there was one person at the beginning of the story that had no idea that the ban was there, right? And she happened to be a realtor. And when her property that she was trying to sell came up in Oak Park, what did she do? She put up a sign.
Yeah.
Okay, so the point is that am I saying that this realtor? I don't know whether she's aware of how many signs would be on the block where she's selling her property. You see? But would she be leery of putting up a sign maybe or would she be worried? Like, for example, why would she take on the property to sell if there's 8 signs or 8 properties to sell there? She'd be like, ooh, something's going on here. I have to reappraise what the value of the house is, what's going on in the schools, what the property tax level is, what would be the negative influences or externalities that would be leading to a valuation or devaluation. Okay, I'm not saying she went even that far, but by her actions deductively show that the sign she believed was going to be advantageous to her. If she didn't believe it was advantageous, she wouldn't have put it up.
No. Molly Surwitz, vice president. No, because that's just a tradition at this point. Having a sign is just a tradition. Oak Park is an outlier in this case for having this sign ban, a major outlier. So you're a first time, and let's read this paragraph again. Molly Surwitz, vice president and broker of the local Baird and Warner office, recalls the sign kerfuffle from this fall. she received a text from a realtor in her office with a photo of a Baird and Warner for sale sign in front of a two flat for sale. Surwitz noted that the sign was not from an Oak Park agent. She reached out to the agent to explain the Oak Park rules. Quote, this agent was from Arlington Heights.
Right.
And had just ordered signs, and the sign company didn't know about the Oak Park ordinance. Now, it's kind of lame for her to blame the sign company, but she's from Arlington Heights. All she knows is signs. But Molly Surwitz, the VP boss, she's saying, you don't know about the Oak Park rules that we've been making a bunch of money off of.
So they're running a cartel of Oak Park realtors, right? Who are, from their perspective, gaining an advantage per the restriction and regulation on signs in Oak Park. We good there? Right.
I don't even know if you'd call it a cartel. It used to be a cartel, but now it's it's just more moot, to have, like, with the internet, who really cares? The sign, no, we're not getting any leads off of it. Yeah, it's a nice tradition to have the sign out front, but it's not helping us. So we might as well just keep it how it's going.
So the Oak Park realtors, they're really in the know. And this Arlington Heights woman is a fucking idiot.
No, she just didn't know. I don't think they think that deep. They're just trying to sell the house. They don't.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Well, that's the people segment.
And if you listen this far.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
What would have happened if I'd gone for it and just said, no, I'm gay? Yeah.
If you listen this far, it's amazing how much we were able to get out of that one piece.
Yeah.
Did we even end it? Did you even end it?
I ended that article, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. All right.
Yeah. That was probably.
Who knew that we would go that deep into that piece?
One of my favorite.
That's by far the most thought-provoking entry that we've ever gotten out of the Wednesday Journal.
I just found out what blockbusting was today, and I'm gonna do the Chicago documentary on blockbusting.
Yeah. You know what? Okay, so can I throw another curveball here? And that is it more racist not to have the sign?
Yes.
Okay. That I would agree. Because I go so far as to say that if you're...
That's why they're dancing around it, though. That's why they're dancing around the fact that they like it.
I'm 100% with you there.
Okay.
I'm 100% with you there. And I think basic studies would bear this out. Like if you're a minority or from, let's say lower classes, it doesn't matter if you're a minority or not, just lower classes, okay? And you're actually in an economic state where you're looking to go into a nicer area, I would go so far as to say, I would bet the first thing that people do in those situations would go to the place and see if there's any signs out. I don't think they go to Zillow first.
Okay, so I think that they go to Zillow first, but you're right. There was a gap before Zillow after the ban where I think you're right, where they're saying, let's drive around a bunch of suburbs.
Yes.
And just see what the neighborhoods are like. And all of a sudden they're thinking, well, Oak Park's closed.
Well, and I'm thinking also just of albeit it's just personal experience, so it's entirely subjective. But I remember my mom, when we would go, because when I was a little kid, we'd have to play the Catholic school parishes, St. Edmund's, Ascension, St. Giles, in Oak Park or for St. Luke's in basketball or soccer or whatever. So we'd always have to go through Oak Park.
Right.
And she would always say, Oak Park and River Forest, there's a lot of old money here. And you know what old money means. It's waspy white or large ethnic, mostly Irish and German Catholic families who are well-heeled and well-established, and they hand down the house from generation to generation. And they stay and make sure that the community or the demographics of the place remain essentially the same. Right?
Yeah.
So that would that would coincide with the fact that shit, there's no sign, there's never anything available here.
Right.
Correct?
It's an
It's the
elitist,
exclusivity, or at
traditional.
least the promotion of exclusivity that I get to your point, could be seen as by the realtors in Oak Park as helpful, correct? To their advantage, to their benefit.
Yes.
Right. All what I would suggest, however, and this is what was my main argument, is that they're wrong.
The brand of the town as elite is more valuable than the lead that they get
Okay.
from the sign, is
Okay.
basically my entire
And and to your argument, and I can't refute this either, so this is not an attack or trying to dismiss it in a way it's a support, is the Arlington Heights woman, because she's an outsider, never pondered nor considered, because of her ignorance of the ban, in addition, that it could be advantageous to her to not have the sign.
I don't even think the one-off agent has ever thought about a real.
That's my point. Because she's an outsider, she just doesn't.
Not even because she's an outsider, because she's probably sold a dozen homes and just said, "Oh, this is one of my favorite."
There's always
parts.
a sign.
I get to put up the for sale sign. It's like a victory lap.
But could that standard not also be assigned to all the Oak Park realtors? They've never sold a house in Oak Park that had a sign because of the ban.
No, because you're working in
Well, wait.
other towns.
But they don't know.
But you would know. But you would know that this is unique about Oak Park. Most places you go, they have a real estate sign. Here, it's actually banned. And the fact that I never even knew about this growing up, that's pretty cool. I love
But do prospective home buyers know that? In other words, yes, if you're moving from one section of Oak Park to another and you've been in the town for 10 years, yes, you would probably know that there's no signs around and we still want a property in Oak Park. So I go to Zillow and I notice, well, wait a second, why are there no signs available? Oh yeah, there's a ban. You find out. But if you're moving in from the city, or if you're moving in from Savannah, Georgia, or something like that, you don't know that there's a ban.
I know. Yeah. Right.
Right. So you don't know there's a ban. And you might, and yes, you could go to Zillow, I suppose. But if you were, let's say you were moving in from Rockford or something like that, you go into Oak Park to visit and you're like, well, or you're going to move because your job's relocated to downtown. Or you're looking for suburbs, to the nearby suburbs, because you don't want to travel that far. You would go upon your visit after interview to go through Oak Park. There are no fucking signs anywhere. Now you might say, okay, well, it just seems to be that again, there has to be a number, and I don't know what that number is, but that's for the deductive reasoning of the realtors to determine that a number, whatever it is, one sign per 15 houses in an area or in a radius.
But that's never possible.
No, of course it would be. You're able to determine that, i.e., if there wasn't a ban, you'd be able to determine that. Like, for example, if I have what's the most advantageous thing that leads to my sale? Well, having a sign out could help. Especially that guy from Rockford goes in. Oh, there's a house. Oh, that's a nice house. That's got a sign in front of it. Again, seeing the sign would be helpful to him. Seeing 15 signs would be like, oh shit, we got to get out of this.
But
neighborhood.
you don't control. How do you control 1 or 15?
The marketplace controls that.
The agencies all get together and they say, whoever gets there first.
They collude with the Stein ban. Why couldn't they collude
easy.
with
That's easy because that's a blanket rule that helps all of them. They don't have to.
Why can't they have a?
Because they don't have to ever they'll never have to dispute, hey, we got there first, or this is within, a quarter mile. This sign is within a quarter mile of everything. That would take so much work. It's so much easier to just say, no bans. Remember the good old days? We're gonna keep those here.
Okay. I'm just saying that there are many more instances where in a given sector, where let's say even if you went back to middle-aged lace manufacturing in Liège, Belgium or something like that, you had obviously different proto-industrial competitors, but they all formed a guild, correct, to cooperate on pricing, standards, right?
I would argue this is that guild.
But you don't need it. you don't need a ban. You don't need a governmental ban to facilitate that. In other words, if it's the determination of the realtors that having no signs at all is beneficial to them, to all of them, it's mutually beneficial, correct?
The Oak Park,
You don't need the ban.
they're the libertarian. I think they're the ANCAPs here.
Who's the ANCAPs?
The real estate companies.
The ANCAPs are cooperating with a ban?
No, they're
From
the
government?
Supreme Court. The Supreme Court made sign banning illegal.
Okay, right. Right.
They're the ones saying the village can't enforce it. We're not really going along with this. It's in the municipal code.
Right. Okay. But yeah,
They're
but
the ones
would there
we're not listening to the Supreme Court. We don't care about I know that whole 1977 thing. The Supreme Court, like if they want to come down here and enforce this, they can do it, but they're not.
Okay, the important distinction here. They're ANCAP vis-a-vis not vis-a-vis defying the law at the federal or national level. But they're certainly not ANCAP because they use the
Right, they're
local
not.
law.
I'm just saying they're the ones acting more libertarian in this sense.
They're acting more anarchist. They're acting more the anarchist at the national level. They're cucks to the. Cucks or simps to the local level,
Because
and
it helps
they're
them.
dumb economically.
No, they're not. They're not dumb economically. They're not dumb
Or
economically.
they're acquiescing economically. They're actually taking on a cost because they believe it's advantageous to them.
No,
which is
'cause
it's up to their discretion.
When you're selling homes, you're thinking about a generation. So if you could have OPRF could have a really bad year, and there's all these for sale signs, and then you could say, I thought Oak Park was this town, and everything that you and I know about Oak Park, if everybody knew that, right? There would be a lot more for sale signs.
Sure.
Right. But they're protected from those hard times, or OPRF having a tough reading level. And Oak Park set itself so high and so elite that any damage to that is way more expensive than missing out. Even if you did miss out on a couple leads on a home, a couple potential leads on a home from a sign, which doesn't happen today.
Yeah, and that system is so fragile that the introduction of one sign from a realtor from Arlington Heights is going to blow it all up.
Yeah, I just think that they're probably like, hey, this is not what we do. I don't think it was that big of a deal. I just think
That sounds like a cartel.
I mean, I don't know if that's what I would call it, but
Hey, Arlington Heights.
You called it a guild. What's the
No, it could. I said it could operate as a
I
guild.
think this is the guild. They're saying we're not listening to the Supreme Court. We're going to make our money here, and we'll adhere to the municipal code.
Right. So all the ice cream shops in Oak Park
No, you keep
better
that's a
get
bad-
together
that's
and
a- that's
take
a
down their
bad-
signs.
That's a bad argument, I think,
Okay, why?
because
It would certainly, man, there's no ice cream in fucking Oak Park. Where is it? Well, let's go to the internet and find out. Oh, wait, there is an Overwise.
because it's a difference between ice cream and homes. Homes are, ice cream's a one-time meal. Homes, the brand of the town matters more. People move to Oak Park to tell other people, we moved to Oak Park. Oh my gosh, Oak Park's so nice. I love Oak Park. As anything that gets in the way of that is two big thumbs down for the real estate agent.
I see. I see the merits in your argument.
I want to
see the
hear.
merits. I'm not convinced, but I see the merits.
Anybody
in it.
listen this entire way through, please give us your
Take
feedback on this.
Who's right?
This has been the biggest argument since voting, by the way.
I know.
This is it. This has been the biggest.
But and I conceded you were 1,000% right on the voting thing. So
It's
maybe
just
in a day or two, I'll say
6 months. Give it 6 months.
Total Charlie's vacuous arguments in terms of economics were indeed correct. Mises and Rothbard, I guess you were wrong. You just got vanquished because of Oak Park signs.
It's not that. It's not that.
Oh, this has been fun. I like
Yeah.
this back and forth. Are you annoyed? You're not annoyed at all, are you? by this
I was
banter?
the only argument I'm annoyed by is the ice cream. I think the ice cream argument is ridiculous, to be honest. But everything else,
I'm
I
searching
really
for okay, can you think of a, a a good or service that is comparable or more
no.
comparable than just a consumer good
I don't
to
think there's
housing?
any. I don't think this. I think this is so niche too. And I know that's like convenient, but I honestly, you're talking about a home which you're going to live in for 30 years,
Okay.
and the brand of the town is a big reason why you move there. There's nothing out there that's like that.
Yeah, I get that point. I'm trying to think of the dynamics of, you know, for example, how much would if I could support your point of contention with the ice cream analogy and why it doesn't work is, no one's invested in determining who they're going to go and have ice cream with, right? As you would be, who's my neighbor? You see my point there?
Yeah.
Um, so I get that. But I'm trying to think of something like
I don't
I
think
don't know.
there's anything that's comparable. But
Yeah, I'm trying to get something along the lines of public making public police blotters, right? Is it best to publicize the number of crimes or not publicize the number of crimes?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a different dynamic too.
Okay. Yeah, I'd have to think about it longer than just, right on the spot if there's a comp that's more analogous to
Yeah.
it.
All right. Well,
What would Stonewall Jackson say? You two faggots get to work on something important. All of a sudden he turned into a Bostonian.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Charlie. This has been riveting, at least for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to
Peace.
take off.
All right.